Thank you.
Break down for us, Ambassador Trigunayat, the significance of Foreign Minister Jaishankar's visit to Moscow. We saw a lot of very interesting conversation around the visit and indeed the grammar of the statement that came out after the visit.
Well, as you know, that the relationship with Russia since the advent of President Putin in 2000 has since been on an upward trajectory all through. And President Putin, I would say, has been personally invested in enriching this relationship to a great extent. And there have, of course, been ups and downs because of various reasons, especially the geopolitical environment that prevails today. But it is one of the relationships which, as Dr. Jaishankar himself mentioned, is a highly valued and time-tested partnership. And I remember I was part of it when we did this special and privileged strategic partnership agreement was signed, and there's annual summits that were to happen. Unfortunately, in the last 1 or 2 years, we have seen that the annual summit could not happen for various reasons. Again, a bit of a geopolitics and a bit of a problem within the country, because Russia has been at war with Ukraine. And India is one country which has had a principled and a steadfast policy with regard to the Russian action and continued to further its dialogue, diplomacy approach, as well as that Prime Minister said that there's not need of war. Now, this is a relationship which has been built around significant, I would say, instrumentalities or institutions. And they have continued to grow and expand, whether it is from in the space area, as you know, today only the ISRO chairman mentioned about it, or whether it is the nuclear power domain or the United Nations Security Council, where Russia has always stood with us or supported India whenever there was a problem with regard to Kashmir or Pakistan. Similarly, we have seen that the trade, I mean, as you know, that after all the sanctions from the West, India continued and started importing much more from Russia, the oil, although we had invested earlier since 2002, significantly in the oil sector in Russia itself.
Deepak, about the visit, Dr. Jaishankar's visit to Moscow, what was the most unusual thing? What struck you about that visit?
I think some of the statements that were made, jointly with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and India's EM, Mr. Jaishankar, it was quite surprising to see the nature of statements that came with regard to, say, Washington's role in recent geopolitical events. The Russians, as always, were not sparing of the US. And India maintained that non-aligned, delicate balance that it always has. So that was quite surprising. But to me, the question still remains, what happens to this relationship which has survived countless travails in the last 7 decades?
What happens to the relationship? In fact, Ambassador Trigunayat is back online. Ambassador Trigunayat, you were talking about the rupee-ruble trade and how the mechanisms that they're going to work out to make sure that Russia can utilize those rupees lying in their banks.
That it is also providing Russia a good opportunity to invest strategically in India, in my view, till such time that the situation develops favorably for them to do some trading outside. The rupee-ruble trade is not something very new to us. It has been done during the Soviet times. It has been continued to done, but this is now because of the growing trade. Obviously, the surplus with Russia is far higher. But now we have also started exporting more to Russia. If you know, this year our trade increased by $3.3 billion, but there is no match to the rest which we are importing from there. So I believe that we'll have to find innovative ways of investing in third countries or in third place jointly or within India. The opportunity, there are billions of dollars of opportunities available to them. There are various nuclear power plants that we are talking about. And also Russia wants India to invest more in the Far Eastern Russia. And so I think that there would be various mechanisms institutionalized as well as banking mechanisms will have to work out. At the same time, Russia is also chairing the BRICS this year. And in the BRICS, there is another thing that we are talking about is driving away from US dollar and creating their own currency. Now, there have to be some opportunities for us to do that.
Ambassador Trigunayat, now, Russia has been one of our biggest defense suppliers for over half a century now. And it remains, I think, one of the top 2 defense suppliers. Now, in recent years, I mean, because of the sanctions on Russia, Russia has had problems accessing Western technology, specifically the chips, microchips that go into weapon systems. And obviously, you know, Chinese chips are going to be unacceptable to India in Russian equipment. How do you, maneuver around this problem of Chinese components in Russian equipment?
Well, I don't really know whether the Chinese components are going to, because see, Russians are equally worried.
Right.
They are also worried about too much of ingress by China into the electronic warfare systems and all.
Right.
So I doubt very much that they will be very heavily reliant on the Chinese chip industry. They are developing their own, and India is also developing its own chip industry quite fast, I would say.
Right.
So once that happens, then you can always have, and right now, as you know, that there was a great big discussion between India and Russia, with I believe with Lavrov, and also in Putin, that they are going to have joint manufacturing today here.
Right.
So it should be possible to use that. And of course, let me tell you one thing is that whatever we are reading in the media is a different thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the USA is still importing large quantities of critical minerals from Russia and have not put sanctions on those.
Right, absolutely. So that's different things that we read in the media, but what goes on behind closed doors. In fact, Deepak has a question for you, sir.
So, sir, there were some statements made in Russia between External Affairs Minister Mr. Jaishankar and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Now, India has managed to walk that tight diplomatic, tightrope. But what I want to understand is, what about the diplomatic tightrope that Russia has to walk between its relationship with India on one hand and China on the other?
Well, Deepak, my thinking is that, Russia is a very proud nation. And the Russians are very proud people. And they have been forced into this kind of an embrace with China by the Americans. And that is the biggest failure, in my view, of the American foreign policy. I mean, they want to contend with China, and then on the other hand, they have strengthened China by pushing Russia towards that. But being what I have known Russia for several years, I can tell you one thing. While the Russians would need Chinese to counter the West or its influence, they need India to counter China. So that's precisely the case. And likewise, India also does not want Russia to be totally in the embrace of China.
Right. Ambassador Trigunayat, also in the foreign minister's statement, there was a very significant reference to 2 corridors, the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor and of course the north-south corridor, which passes through Iran. How important are these 2 corridors, given the fact that, the India-Middle East economic corridor, Europe corridor, is disrupted by what's going on in the West Asia right now?
You see, these connectivity corridors are very important from our strategic perspective, and that's why I remember I was part of it at the time, again, discussions when we started off in 2002, the North-South Transport Corridor. But unfortunately, due to sanctions, due to logistical problems, even commitment on all partners, I think it has taken a long time. But during this period when Russia has been isolated by the West, they started using this corridor quite significantly, and there is a much greater focus by Russia and Iran also to make it more operational. India has also agreed to do greater focus on it. Essentially, now we are investing more there in the Chabahar port in another terminal. Shahid Beheshti terminal is there. Now even Chabahar is going to be included in the North-South Transport Corridor. So that corridor is very important from our perspective, even despite the problems that these countries have. But as you know, that there is no permanence in the international politics.
Right.
Likewise, the Vladivostok and Chennai corridor, which President Putin and Prime Minister Modi had announced during PM's visit, I think another very significant maritime corridor for India, because this allows you an access not only to far east of Russia, but also to the Arctic. And Arctic is going to be the next, after the Indo-Pacific, that is going to be the next contested region, and where all big powers, including India, will have to be present, because it is one of the richest regions left.
Right, right. And last question, Ambassador Trigunayat, how important is our outreach to Russia? I mean, not that they were not friends, I mean, they've been the closest allies, in fact. But, in the light of what's been going on, we hear about a possible Iranian hand in the drone attack on the oil tanker in the Arabian Sea. Is it possible that India could reach out to Iran through this Russian outreach and convince them?
Well, we have direct relations with the Iranians,
Yes.
and we, in fact, last week or 10 days ago, we had a joint commission. Iranian delegation was here, and we are in constant touch with Iran. So I think the Iran will directly not be involved in attacking any Indian ship. That is, in my view, will be stretching it a bit too far, because they are equally interested in maintaining good ties with India. As far as Russia is concerned, obviously Russia is a major power, and they use tremendous influence on the Iranians. And I'm quite sure that this situation in the Red Sea, especially that of Houthis,
Yes.
would have been discussed with the Russians.
Right. And do you believe a state visit by Prime Minister Modi is likely before the Lok Sabha elections next year?
Well, normally it should have happened this year, as
Yeah.
we have the annual summit thing, but this did not happen. But next year, as you know, Russia is also the chair of the BRICS.
Yes.
And in October, there will be a Kazan summit there. So I'm sure Prime Minister Modi will look at visiting there. But I doubt very much that before the elections, there can be a visit, unless the international scenario completely changes.
News 9 Plus. Download now.